and welcome to the second Saturday sketchbook that is not happening on Saturday because, well, my time management skills are not optimal. But welcome anyways, and again, a warning that if you are sensitive to flashing lights, this may not be the speed paint for you, as I go through a whole lot of blending layers, and it can be very painful if you don't do well with flashing lights. In any case, welcome. This particular drawing is kind of a lot. I'd messed with a new brush for the actual lining part, as you'll see here pretty soon. And this lovely lad is Morel. He's a little mushroom collecting, treasure hunting, playful lad who is having a grand old time hunting seals currently, in this particular picture. But as you can see with the line art, I went with a much more fluid brush than I normally do, and it was definitely an experience trying to work with it. It meant I had it to be a lot less precise than I normally am, which, again, kind of an experience. I like to be very, very precise in all of my line work and make sure that I've got everything where it needs to be, and that just doesn't work with this. I also tried something new with the background, as you'll see later on with the rendering of it, that I'm pretty proud of, and honestly end up trying out with a couple of my other backgrounds in this set of speed paints. Oh goodness. Apologies for the often being like, oh, brain cell off on another planet. That's just how it do be on Sundays. Like, I took my meds a couple minutes ago, so I'm not entirely with it right now. But nonetheless, here you go. See the background here, like, this bit is pretty standard, just lighting, shadows, going through, making sure everything has color, all of that. I did it in a different order than I normally do, but nothing too extraordinary. But here is where I start rendering a lot more, as you can see with, like, the background and the mountains. It was definitely an experience. I, at this point, didn't really know what I was doing with rendering water, which is fair, because water is the bane of my existence, at least in drawing, and in rain. Good lord, how do people deal with rain? I certainly don't. Rain sucks. But yes, this next one is of Stormwind and Morel. They're hunting a rabbit, they're having a grand old time, they're probably puppies at the time. These two characters are from Felvargs, which is an amazing art group that is very good if you like collecting things, all of the things. There's a lot of chance for hoarders to hoard things, and I am a hoarder, therefore I hoard things. The background on this one I'm real proud of. I did a lot more painting for it than I normally do, and it was certainly an experience. It's not my usual MO to paint backgrounds. It takes a lot of time and a lot of hand hurt, and I don't really have good brushes for it. Or I do have good brushes for it, but I don't know how to use them. It's just kind of a mess. But as you can see here, like, I went through and I was like, okay, we're just gonna add some texture, add some, brushes. I've got some really nice, the Ghibli brush set, based on the Studio Ghibli movies and all that jazz, that I went through and used for this, for a lot of the plants and stuff, because drawing plants by hand is painful. I'm sure anybody who has drawn plants by hand can agree. Like, I can draw rocks, I can do really good rocks, I can do kind of okay, like, dirt. Plants, God no, there's too much organic shape to them, and I just can't. Like, I've tried, and on another piece that I'm currently working on, I think I did a pretty good job given my general dislike of drawing plants. But it was definitely an experience. Here we go with lining all of the Vargs themselves. There's Stormwind. He's a little popper pup. He likes telling stories and being super overdramatic, and, we love that for him. And then there's Morel, who is just like, oh, I'm gonna sneak up on this little rabbit. The rabbit is staring in confusion, as rabbits are often known to do. I did not paint them because, oh my god, trying to paint such an organic shape as a wolf is painful. I did a bit of painting on, like, their shading and stuff, but other than that, nah. God. There are some people who can do amazing shading that's, like, painted and stuff, but I am not one of them, at least not yet. I've been looking into some tutorials and stuff, but it's definitely a different experience. So I just add a bit of texture to them, a bit of lighting. Very happy with how that turned out. Yeah, and there they are. Over here is another picture of Morel and Stormwind, because they are my current two, accepted Felvargs. And they are hunting this elk or deer or whatever it is. They go munch, 'cause, food. These poses were definitely an experience to try and get properly down the way I wanted them to. Posing in general is really difficult for me, especially with, poses that are heavily in motion. 'Cause, how do you position leg and arm and muscle? I'm taking an anatomy and physiology class currently, so, I should know at least some of this, but I really don't. Everything is guesswork. Everything. Guesswork and referencing. Heavy referencing. Referencing is important, as anybody will tell you. As people keep on trying to tell me, too. Referencing is important. Being able to be like, okay, that's how they did that. And, if referencing from life doesn't help you, then, try referencing just, what shapes people use. Looking at what shape represents what, because it can be really handy. Through here, going some rocks, more rocks, mountains. I'm really happy with how those mountains turned out, actually. There's a lot more shape to them than I normally have, which is always nice to see. And I went with a lot of, purples and greens, because, yes, working in that type of palette is really fun. I'm normally not a fan of coloring, and I'm still not, but, being able to work within whatever the heck the color palette's called, where it's, 3 colors that are all, right next to each other. Nope, can't remember the word. Never mind. Anyways, working with that is fun. I really like how I lit the mountains back here. It adds even more to their shapedness. We've got the mountains, we've got, big tree, other big tree, rocks, fun stuff like that. And here I go through doing a bunch of lighting stuff, very small things, some shading, and stars! Stars are my favorite part. And here you can see the completed piece. Ooh, this next one I'm kind of happy with just the posing on. These 3 belong to a different member of Felvargs who I was doing a bunch of activity roles for, in exchange for a character, pretty much. As you'll see here, had a lot of trouble figuring out what kind of prey they were chasing. It was almost a badger, but then it's badgers are hard to draw. As I'm sure that everybody has experienced at least once in their life attempting to draw a badger. I'm sure that's a normal, everyday experience to have, and not something unique to me. But, sometimes you try and draw a badger, and it's just not badger-shaped enough, and, badgers are very shaped. It's wild. They are so shaped, and, there's a very specific badger shape that badgers have to have, otherwise they're not badgers. Which probably sounds like a bunch of nonsense to any of y'all who don't think about badger-shaped badgers very often, like normal people. Normal people. You know who you are, normal human beings who don't think about how shaped badgers are. And, European badgers, they're shaped. American badgers, also shaped, but differently shaped. They're like puffballs, but, puffballs filled with rage. Whereas European badgers are, shaped, but they're shaped like they'll offer you a cup of tea while mauling you. As opposed to just not doing that. Anyways, back to the actual drawing at hand, as opposed to talking about how shaped badgers are. As you can see, I kind of adjusted the sizing of my canvas here, because doing a full background would be kind of a lot. Pretty simple lighting scheme here, pretty simple. Just a bunch of, like, I add some highlights here, add some multiply layers there. You know, just pretty basic. Generally, my shading style is a little more complex than this, but I was trying to get this one done quickly. And through here is another one that I was doing with somebody else's Felvargs as payment for, you know, a couple of characters and all that. They're trotting along. So much trotting. Got some flowers, because there was a spring event going on that I joined on the very tail end of. Wolves' tails. I think it's funny. But yes, there was a spring event that I joined on the very tail end of. Springtide? Yes, Springtide. And, you know, doing some roles for somebody with the Springtide Adventure, where you pretty much just have to draw them having fun during spring, which I think is lovely. Yeah, February is Springtide. I'm pretty happy with how the lines for this one went, although they kind of get obscured just due to the darker colors of the Felvargs in question. But, you know, you can see, like, I really like how that shading turned out on the first one. Overlay layers are my friend. Oh my goodness. Like, I have never once found a drawing that overlay layers did not help. Like, it makes a really nice shading where it's like, you take this just pale yellow, and you swoop-diddy-swoop, and it's like, yes. And then you just adjust the opacity so that it's not completely blinding, and it's like, yes, this looks nice. I enjoy this. As you can see, I employ mostly rim lighting, when I really probably shouldn't. But rim lighting is nice and easy and simple, and I like that about it. You see here I go through a whole bunch of different attempts at, you know, figuring out what the heck I'm doing with this background, and it turns out okay. I'm not super happy with it, but, like, it does its job, and sometimes oh boy, that's a lot of flashing. Anyways, it does its job, and that's really all I can ask of it. You'll see here, like, it's just a really nice little scene. I like how the mountains turned out. This next one is yet another piece of payment, that I did for somebody in exchange for, I believe this is the person who gave me Stormwind, actually. And I'm super happy with the pose and the background. Honestly, this entire piece I am super proud of. Like, I love a good mountain. Mountains are so fun to frickin' draw. Like, on the mountain, under the mountain, beside the mountain. I've got this nice frame set up with, like, a comic panel feel to it. Like, I just really love this piece. It was fun to work on, and I like the result. You know, you see going through here with just the shaping and the line art. But I think once we get to the coloring, you'll really see what I'm talking about. Because I was trying out a new coloring style, or rendering style, rather, where I start with, like, this one really base color, and from there I do a bunch of, like, light and shade to show different values and stuff. It's real nice. I enjoy it a lot. You see I go through here, and it's like, oh, all the cracks in the mountain, because cracks are the best part of the frickin' mountain. The crack is the powerhouse of the mountain. Actually, that sounds bad. Anyways. But yeah, you see I add all these textures. Mountains are really easy to fudge the perspective on. Like, mountains and rocks are amazing if you don't like actually, you know, putting in the effort to do perspective. It's great. Because, God, perspective is difficult, and I don't do it well. Or I can do it well, but it takes so much energy, and I'm like, do I really want to put all that energy in? No. Therefore, rocks. But you'll see, anyways, that I go through, I do a bunch of lighting stuff, a bunch of blending layers, just to swap it up, and there it is. We've got one more piece here, which is not for Felvargs, and I think is the only piece that's not for Felvargs in this particular grouping. It's an anatomical heart that I did for my anatomy and physiology class that I mentioned earlier. I'm really happy with how it turned out. I was mimicking a pop art style, as you'll see once we get to the coloring, where it's just very vibrant reds and yellows and blues. I love my highly saturated colors. They're so nice. Like going through there with just the screen tones. And going through here is the labeling for them, just because that's one of the requirements for the class. Interior vena cava, right ventricle, all that fun stuff. Went through, made it kind of a overlay thing. Lots and lots and lots of labeling. But here it is. Oh, and I'm afraid that's all the time we've got left. So have a good evening, y'all, or morning, whatever time it is for you. And maybe like if you liked it.